lot of fun right now, I gotta admit.
What's up, my Wizards dev, SBMTG, down there with your decks and stuff on YouTube. You know by now. Today, matter of fact, case in point, we have a deck. Something that people have been asking for kind of a long time here. This is blue-red aggro. We're going to do it on a budget, and on TCGplayer.com, it's only going to cost you about $30 to build this thing. Before we move into the creatures, I want to formally thank everybody for 20,000 subscribers. As a matter of fact, we're moving so quickly here that since we hit 20,000, we got another 1,000. We're at roughly 21. By the time I release this, we might be at 22 for all I know. Thank you for all the support lately, new Wizards and old alike. I appreciate all of that. It's super awesome. We're moving quickly here as far as getting subscribers, and I really super serial have to thank you for that. You're awesome. And so to celebrate that, let's dance with what brought me an awesome budget deck. Well, there's 15 creatures in this aggro deck, which doesn't sound like much for an aggro deck, but this deck is very much modeled after the decks from last season that played aggro, you know, that usually play anywhere between 12, as little as 12, and 16, 17 creatures, you know, and then a bunch of spells to sort of supplement what those creatures can do. We're doing the exact same thing here. Problem is, key piece in all those aggro decks was this lady, Monastery Swiftspear, right here. We lost her in the rotation, which sucks because she's probably, seriously here, the best aggro creature of all time. She's maybe the best red 1-drop of all time. A lot of, you know, goats you can apply to this, greatest of all times. But we lose her. So how the hell do we replace her? Well, there are a couple of things we can sort of replace her with. Not all the way, she's just one of the best creatures in Magic history. But there's some things that are similar, notably Stormchaser Mage. We'll get to Stormchaser in a second. What are some 1-drops that we can replace her with? Well, there's at least one that's nowhere near the power level of Swiftspear, but is at least, you know, in some ways comparable. This is a 4-of Village Messenger to start things off in the creatures. Village Messenger, obviously a 1-mana, 1/1, you know, 1-power guy with haste. That's a lot like Swiftspear, but Swiftspear obviously gets better from there. But so does this, you know. If we're playing against a slower deck, a turtley deck, a control deck, for instance, the first few turns we can probably flip this fairly easily. And then it's a 2/2 with a form of evasion. We've got a lot of pump spells in the deck, so that's always good to have a form of evasion on the battlefield. But, you know, even post-languish, we can drop this and pump him once, and on an empty board, we're dealing, you know, 4 damage. If we can give it double strike, when we are playing the spell that gives things double strike, then we can end up doing like 10 damage sometimes on an empty board with this thing, post-languish or sweeper of any kind, really. Last thing I'll say about this is that the obvious weakness is that once it is transformed, we're going to be playing a couple of spells a turn ourselves, you know, so we can transform it back pretty easily without really wanting to. I'm not that worried about that, actually. Once it is flipped, we can play a few pump spells on unblocked creatures all in one turn and often finish the game off. Early on in the game, once it does transform, we can get through a huge swing with it with its form of evasion, pump it a couple of times, and it can do a lot of damage for us in one turn. So if it flips back over, we don't care. It's already done its job. 3 copies of Zurgo in the deck to finish off the 1-drops. I want to play at least 7 1-drops in the deck. And yeah, I know Zurgo's legendary, but I still want to play the 3 copies. Both to maximize the number of 1-drops that we can have in the deck, and also just to maximize our chance of drawing Zurgo in the early game, you know? With aggro decks, you're only going to go 5-6 turns deep for the most part anyway. So you're really not worried about running into the legend rule with this. You just want to be able to draw it as often as possible in the early game. And you can't really argue with a 1-mana guy that has 2 power and 2 toughness. You don't see that every day. Not only that, but Dash is delicious. Like, it's really good in this format, you know. Declaration and Stone, probably the most played spot removal in the format. Languish is seeing a lot of play right now, and he gets by both of those when you're dashing him in and then picking him back up. So let's play Zurgo. It seems prudent. Into the 2-drops, we're obviously playing 4 copies of Stormchaser Mage. This is the other thing that replaces Swiftspear. Although Swiftspear's, you know, one of her big draws was that she only cost 1 mana. Run around on turn 1, you set up for the rest of the game. You can't say the same thing about Stormchaser, but Stormchaser, just for an extra blue mana investment, a form of evasion on a creature like this is insane, and an extra point of toughness is better than you might think. Something that comes up a lot in testing, a lot actually, is that if they play a Grasp of Darkness on Stormchaser, then all you have to do is play a Titan Strength or really any of the other pump spells we're running in this deck, and you've just beaten their Grasp of Darkness. That's really good, you know. You'll prowess, that's an extra toughness, and you'll get the extra toughness from Titan Strength, that's 5 toughness, you beat Grasp of Darkness. That can be incredibly important. Not only that, but obviously with all the pump spells that we're playing in the deck, this thing can sometimes get through for massive damage. Hilarious meme. One more thing I should say about Stormchaser Mage before we move on here is that this is really good against Archangel of Tides, a card we absolutely hate. If we block their Archangel in the air with our Stormchaser, or if they're dumb enough to block our Stormchaser with their Archangel, then one Titan Strength is going to put their Angel in the graveyard, and our Stormchaser gets to stay out. So that's actually really important. But obviously, Stormchaser is really the entire reason to add blue to the deck at all, is to get access to this amazing creature right here. And to finish off the 2-drop creatures and the creatures in general, 4 copies of, and this is maybe weird, but it's a budget deck, 4 copies of Elusive Spellfist. Now, I know a lot of people really like this card. If you had a couple of bucks, though, you could play Abbot of Carol Keep, but I'm not totally sure you'd want to. Yeah, Abbot's really, really good. Extra card advantage is awesome. We're playing a lot of 1 and 2 mana spells in the deck. So Abbot is good. Abbot is obviously very good. Probably what you want to play, but I have had a lot of success in testing playing Elusive Spellfist. This card is very, very good. And I know a lot of people know that already, but once you play, you know, a Titan Strength on this, that is 5 power that's going to go unblocked that turn. Not to mention any other pump spells. Not to mention if you play an Uncaged Fury, which is a new Temur Battle Rage on it. With either of these creatures, Stormchaser or Elusive Spellfist, on turn 4, we can play an Uncaged Fury and a Titan Strength on either one of them and end up dealing 14 damage that's really, really hard to block. And that can finish the game out right there. So we've got, I mean, turn 4 isn't half bad. We can win the game by then if we've done everything right up to that point. 14 damage is crazy. And even if we don't win the game off of that swing, then we'll probably put them at 2, 3, something like that, and we can just finish the game with a Fiery Temper at our leisure. So both of these cards are incredible 2-drops for this deck and really help flesh things out. They both have evasion. In the case of Elusive Spellfist, he's got like the best evasion possible. So I've really, really, really liked playing with this card. And this is a thing to consider against the, you know, white-based aggro decks. A 1-3 on turn 2 is not the worst blocker in the world, so there's that. In the spells here, we're playing 25 of them. That's a ton of spells. We're going to do these in chunks, too. Let's talk about the pump spells that we've ended up playing first, though. I've obviously brought up Titan Strength about 1,000,000 times in this video, but we're also playing Rush of Adrenaline, and we're playing Uncaged Fury, something else I brought up. We're playing a 3 of Rush and a 2 of Uncaged Fury with a 4 of Titan Strength. Titan Strength, just no-brainer, best pump spell in the format. Really, really good. The scry is also important, so we can scry away lands that we don't want, or, you know, scry up lands that we do need. That's a thing. Or, you know, we can just pave the way to good creatures, good spells. Scry is very important on Titan Strength, but just, you know, 3 power for 1 mana, very good. Rush of Adrenaline will give the creature trample, which is sometimes better than it looks like. Sure, Stormchaser has a form of evasion, and Elusive Spellfist just has out-and-out evasion. But it's good when a guy on the ground gets blocked, and we can trample over for a lot of damage, especially if we also play an Uncaged Fury on the creature that we Rush of Adrenaline. Uncaged Fury is actually kind of super awesome. It's no Temur Battle Rage. Obviously, it costs a whole 1 extra mana, but it does give the creature a built-in buff, which is pretty good. It's like it gives it the built-in prowess trigger from Temur Battle Rage, which can be cool because on Stormchaser and Spellfist, we're basically getting prowess triggers anyway, and we'll get an extra, you know, quote-unquote prowess trigger, a +1/+1 buff from Fury, and Fury will give him double strike. This can lead to, like I've already said, ridiculous amounts of damage. And even if just one of our village messengers goes unblocked in a combat, then we can Uncaged Fury and Titan Strength and just end up doing a ridiculous amount of damage. So Uncaged Fury has actually been a little bit better than I thought it would be in testing. I'd forgotten how gross Temur Battle Rage was, and it's like Temur Battle Rage could cost an extra mana and still probably be playable. We do need some removal, and we get a chance to play some really, really cheap removal, and some of it doubles as sort of reach for us in the late game so we can finish it out. We're playing 4 copies of Lightning Axe and 4 copies of Fiery Temper to that end. This is really the peanut butter and jelly of the format right now. These go really well together, and honestly, the whole reason that blue-red hybrid decks, whether they're mill or Thing in the Ice decks, are important right now is probably because of this combo and how good it is against all the heavy aggro in the format. You know, just a lot of mono-white decks doing their thing right now and splashing like an extra color. Humans-based white decks. And these can be really good against those, especially on the draw. Turn 2, we can often, you know, play the Lightning Axe, discard Fiery Temper, pay 2 mana, and kill both guys they played so far. That can really, really hinder their progress and be awesome. And, obviously, a little bit towards the mid-game, if we just want to blow a couple of creatures away and get in with our guys, really good with that, too. And remember that Stormchaser and Spellfist are getting prowess triggers off these the whole time. So, definitely play these cards. I also want to draw some cards in this aggro deck. You know, there's a lot of reasons why we want to do that. We want to cycle through cards as fast as possible to get what's important at the time. To that end, I'm going to play 3 copies of Expedite, 3 copies of Slip Through Space, and 2 copies of Tormenting Voice. Tormenting Voice is another madness outlet for Fiery Temper. It's important to have another one of those, and it filters cards for us along the way. A turn 3 Tormenting Voice and Fiery Temper can sometimes feel disgusting. You blow away their best, 3 power and under creature, and you get 2 cards out of the deal. That's pretty good. So I've really liked Tormenting Voice so far in the deck. But Expedite and Slip Through Space are all-stars. Now, I know that we already have a haste creature, and we already have a creature that can go unblocked. I'm not that worried about it. I just want cards that cost 1 mana and draw us a card. If they do something incidental for us, that's fine. In this case, they do some of the best incidental things they could possibly do, Say you have something with no evasion like a Zurgo, and we gotta get it through, Slip Through Space, awesome with that, and we can still play pump spells in the Zurgo. We can still give him double strike with an Uncaged Fury too. So sending through, a big guy that wouldn't normally have evasion, also very important. Also want to point out that I like the pseudo interaction between Slip Through Space and Elusive Spellfist. Obviously you don't target Spellfist with the Slip Through Space, but once we play Slip Through Space, Spellfist will get the buff and go unblockable, and whatever creature we played Slip Through Space on will also be unblockable. So that's cool to have, 2 unblockable guys from just playing 1 spell. That can sometimes be important. We're playing 20 lands in this deck, and this is the budget version, but I still think it's very important to play Shivan Reef. So I want as many different sources of each color as we can possibly get here. And sure, we're not playing as much blue as we are red, but there's still some very important cards with blue in the casting cost, i.e. all of our 2-drops. So we've got, or all of our 2-drop creatures, so we've got to play, enough islands to where we can get at least 1 onto the battlefield fairly early. To that end, you could play Wandering Fumarole at maybe a 2 of if you had a couple of extra bucks, but same time I want most of our lands to come into play untapped if possible. But it's probably worth playing Fumarole if you got it. Same token though, you've got to play the Shivan Reef. You just got to have as many sources as you possibly can for each color. Here's our sideboard right here, fairly self-explanatory against other aggro decks. We've got some removal. Fiery Impulse is actually really important. We can counter things like Collected Company. We can counter removal and stuff with copies of Dispel and Invasive Surgery. I think they're both somewhat important. I really like Invasive Surgery, and I might want to switch the copies of Dispel and Surgery here in the sideboard. But probably the most important card in the sideboard is Tears of Valakut. Just takes out Archangel of Ties. No questions asked, and that is freaking awesome. Like, we really hate Archangel of Ties. It stops us from, even if we can pay the mana, it's a huge butt in the air, and we hate that a lot. And we really hate paying the mana too, so let's just get rid of the stupid angel as quickly and easily as possible. Tears of Valakut does that for us. And here are your power rankings for the deck. A final score of 58, which looks fairly low, but is relatively high for a budget deck like this. And as usual with all-in aggro decks, the categories where it doesn't do well, resiliency for instance, it doesn't care about. It's just trying to win the game as quickly as possible, so it wants to maximize stats in things like offense, speed. If you try to maximize those stats, some stats are going to suffer. And that's exactly what's happened here. The deck just cares about all-out, pedal to the metal, full throttle speed. Best news, as I've already mentioned, the deck only cost about 30 bucks. Median prices on TCG Player. I think it's somewhere around like 32 right now for the median prices. If you go low prices, you could pay as little as $25 for this deck right now. You'll get a lot of moderately played cards, but whatever, I don't care about that. That's all I've got for the time being. Let me know how you felt about this deck. I actually think it's a pretty good deck, man. It's one out of nowhere against some pretty high profile stuff. I'm also testing Black-White Eldrazi. I think that's a very competitive deck that's at the top of the format right now, or close to the top of the format. And this deck has pulled off crazy wins against that deck more than once in testing. So, and I really have enjoyed playing it. I like playing aggro. I like just swinging face and trying to kill them as quickly as possible as sort of a game. So, really have enjoyed playing this deck. But, just mentioned Black-White Eldrazi. I'll be bringing that to you next time. Finally. I've been talking about that deck for a while. I've had it built for a minute, in its final form for a while. So I'm finally going to bring that to you, and I really like that deck, you guys. I can't wait to show it to you. And after that, I've got a lot of stuff that's coming up. Cryptolith Right, I've mentioned that a few times, and people are kind of nudging me about the Devil Impact Trimmers deck, which I'm also going to have for you as soon as possible. I've already told you I'm working on Boros Midrange, which is shaping up really nicely so far, so I'm also going to present that to you soon. So if you enjoyed the content, like it, and if you want to see more like it, like all the stuff I just talked about, sub to the channel. Please do that. That's all I got for now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this deck. I actually think that it's pretty darn good and can be upgraded fairly easily, you know. And it's just a blast to play with. So try it out, shuffle it up, let me know how you feel, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm Dev, this is Julie, we're from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.